What is up, guys? I actually had another video planned for this week, but with Valorant showing off a ton of gameplay, I thought this was the best time to talk to you about why you should be excited about Riot's fighting game, Project L. This video is going to be split up into two parts, and it's going to be a shorter video, just talking about, first, if you're a fighting game player but you have no clue who Riot Games is, I'm going to be talking about who Riot Games is and why you should care about this game being made. The second part is going to be for you that likes Riot Games video games and are wondering if Riot Games are actually going to make a good fighting game. So I'm going to be talking more about who is working on this fighting game and why you should care about it, even if you're not the biggest fighting game fan. If you've never heard of Riot Games before, you're probably living under a rock. Riot Games is one of the biggest esports companies in the world, being the creators behind the famous MOBA League of Legends. League of Legends is one of the most famous esports games to be made and is one of the most played games to this day. They just showed off their newest game, Valorant. Valorant is a competitive FPS that is marketed to actually go head to head with the biggest esports shooter out there, and that being Counter-Strike. It is made to directly compete with the biggest competitive shooting game, which is absolutely insane they're doing this. Now, I was kind of interested in Riot's fighting game before they showed off Valorant this weekend, but after they showed it off, I have so much more excitement. Before, I was more interested in it because, it's a huge company known to make competitive games that focuses on being very competitive, that has a huge budget behind them, and if they want to put in the money, they could make an insane game no matter like what genre. But now that they showed off Valorant, they're showing really what that means. If you're not a FPS fan, you might not understand why this is so huge. But I like a good FPS game. I play them quite a lot. I even posted a few FPS videos on this channel. And Riot just came out swinging with this FPS game. They basically said all the things that FPS players hate about newly released games, that they hate about competitive shooters. Riot Games is handling from the start. They are promising stuff like 128 tick servers. They're promising anti-hack systems that are gonna work in their free-to-play game. They are focusing on the game feeling crisp and smooth, focusing on the game feeling like Counter-Strike 1.6 and Counter-Strike Go. They hired one of the guys that made one of the most popular Counter-Strike maps to be their map developer. These guys are not messing around. They went out and hired people that are experts in the field and put their senior developers that have loads of experience with making competitive MOBAs on the team with them to make a completely competitive shooter. If they just give half the love they have given to Valorant to their upcoming fighting game, we might have one of the best competitive fighting games on our hands for the next decade. And I'm not even exaggerating. So that's a bit about Riot Games and how they are as a company and what they are working on besides this fighting game. Now I want to talk a bit about the people that are working on the fighting game. Riot Games went out and acquired the team behind the fighting game called Rising Thunder. Rising Thunder was a small indie PC fighting game that was advertised around 2016 at EVO, and shortly after EVO got released in beta, and I think about 2 months later, they were bought up by Riot, and we never heard from the developers again. The developers on that team, one of the lead designers for that team was Seth Killian. If you don't know who Seth Killian is in the FGC, you should know. He's a former insanely good commentator and player, and he worked for Capcom for almost 6 years. And one of his roles at Capcom while he worked there for 6 years was Special Combat Advisor. Now, of course, it doesn't go into detail on his LinkedIn what that title actually means. But if you go from the title, that means that he advised how the combat should be in the fighting games at Capcom. He worked on the titles Street Fighter 4, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 when he was working at Capcom. These are some of the games that are seen as being the golden standard of fighting games in newer generations. These games are either highly hated or highly loved. Either you really love Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3, maybe you hate one and love the other, or maybe you hate Street Fighter 5, Street Fighter 4 and Marvel vs. Capcom 3. But you can't deny that Street Fighter 4 is one of the games that kickstarted 2D fighters again, made them more popular than they were before that. And personally, Marvel's Capcom 3 and Street Fighter 4 are two of the games that is in my top 5 of favorite fighting games of all time, in terms of just gameplay and how fun they are to play. So Seth Killian, being the lead designer at Riot Games, probably is the guy that is working on the fighting game. I have high hopes for this guy to be able to lead the team into making an excellent, crisp fighting game. But he's not the only guy working at the Riot Games studio working on this game. Tony and Tom Cannon is also working at the studio. If you don't know Tony and Tom Cannon, they are founders of EVO, the biggest fighting game tournament of the year. And Tony Cannon is the developer behind GGPO. GGPO is one of the most sought after netcodes in fighting games. Whenever a fighting game comes out and it doesn't have GGPO, people complain that the game doesn't have GGPO. But people don't understand what netcode is. Netcode is what fighting game players talk about when we talk about playing online, how it feels to play online, and the code that handles playing online, we call that the netcode. GGPO is a rollback netcode that is seen as being the golden standard for netcode in fighting games. Games that have had GGPO in it, such as Killer Instinct and Skullgirls, are seen as some of the most fun games to play online because the netcode rarely fails. Rising Thunder, the game they made before they got acquired by Riot Games, had GGPO, and it was one of the most smooth online experiences I've ever played to this day. I remember 4 years later how it was to play that game online, and it was smooth. That is insane. That is absolutely insane. So, this is just a few of the developers on the Riot Games studio, on the Riot Games, probably working on the fighting game. There's probably loads more of talented people working on this game, and it just gives me so much hope that these guys are working on this game, combined with how I saw Valorant being showcased this weekend. If they're doing to the fighting game what they did to Valorant, I have no doubt in my mind this game is going to be amazing. And the only problem that might occur, well, that can still happen. There can still be a lot of fuck-ups, sorry for swearing, in this game's development. Of course, this isn't like, I'm not sitting here saying that this game is going to be good no matter what. They could mess up. I hope not. This has the potential to be one of the best fighting games ever made in newer times. It has the potential to bring in a lot of new people to play fighting games. It has the potential to be a fun, good online experience. And that kinda is insane. With Guilty Gear Strive just announcing that they're gonna be having rollback netcode, more than ever, these developers are focusing on netcode. Even Street Fighter 5, which has had a lot of trouble with the netcode in the past year, is doing their best to try to fix it, because the environment for fighting games, the environment for competitive fighting games online is becoming more and more crowded, and there's becoming more and more titles that are focusing on making a good fighting game, which is only good for us. Riot Games have the potential, maybe not to become the best fighting game of the next decade, but make these other fighting game developers put their act together and make an insane fighting game if Riot doesn't make a good one. But I really think that Riot Games have a chance with the developers they have behind them, Seth Killian and the Cannon brothers, and the rest of the team, to make something amazing. And I only hope for the best. I hope this helped you also become more excited for this game. Sadly, there isn't a lot of news around the games. They're still keeping it very quiet. They're still keeping the cards close to the chest. Hopefully, we'll get some more news this year, but we probably aren't going to see this game until next year. I think Riot Games are focusing on Valorant this year. Maybe they're going to start talking about the fighting game in like winter, because then like the hype for Valorant is maybe dying a bit down, and then they can start talking about the new fighting game, about the fighting game as the next project. Personally, I'm very excited for this game. You can expect me to talk more about this game as we're coming closer and closer to getting actually more news. I'm not going to be a news side YouTube channel. If this is your first time at the channel and you're thinking, oh sweet, I have a Valorant dedicated fighting game channel. Valorant dedicated. A Riot Games fighting game, a dedicated Riot Games fighting game channel. That's not me. Not right now. I do all fighting games. I'm going to be playing Guilty Gear Strive. I'm going to be making footage on this game and on this YouTube channel. I'm gonna be working on Street Fighter stuff still. I just wanted to talk with you guys about this. And if you don't know about Riot Games, or if you didn't know anything about the fighting game they're making, you should know, because this is exciting news. This has been a short video on the topic. Hope you guys liked it. Leave a like if you like it. Subscribe if you're new to the channel and you thought this was pretty dope. Stay tuned. That's all. Have a nice day. Stay safe. Bye.